When a Hollywood legend steps onto a late-night stage, you expect admiration, not mockery. But on this particular night, Sylvester Stallone found himself facing something far more volatile than scripted humor. A clash of respect and ridicule. The atmosphere was typical for a talk show. The studio lights glowed softly, the audience buzzed with anticipation, and the jazz band wrapped up its intro as Jimmy Kimmel appeared with his trademark grin. "Tonight, we have a very special guest," Jimmy began, smiling mischievously. The man who made mumbling an art form, Rocky himself, Sylvester Stallone. The audience erupted into cheers as Stallone walked out, his presence commanding as ever. Dressed in a sleek black blazer over a deep maroon shirt, he greeted the crowd and took his seat beside Jimmy, his gravelly voice steady as he said, "It's good to be here." "Good to have you, Sly," Jimmy replied. "I was told you'd be bringing wisdom, experience, a few unintelligible syllables, and maybe a protein shake." The crowd chuckled. Stallone smiled faintly, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of irritation. "Left the protein shake backstage," he quipped. "Didn't want to outshine your green juice." Jimmy grinned. "Touché. So, let's talk about your new movie. Another action flick? Or did you finally decide to make something with, plot?" The laughter that followed was polite but edged. Stallone didn't break his calm. "It's a story about redemption," he said slowly. "A veteran confronting the ghosts of his past, something that speaks to real pain." Jimmy tilted his head with mock awe. "Deep. And here I thought it was just another reason to flex those biceps." The crowd tittered again, sensing the tension rising. "Sometimes pain needs muscle," Stallone said quietly. "Not to show off, but to carry the weight." The room seemed to cool a few degrees. Jimmy forced a chuckle. "Wow, that's poetic. Did Rambo teach you that, or was it Rocky?" Stallone leaned back, voice firm. "Funny," he said. "I always thought comedy was supposed to punch up, not down." The jab landed. Jimmy's smile faltered. "Just having fun," he said quickly. "Don't want to get body slammed on live TV." Stallone met his gaze. "Don't worry. I only hit when it's scripted." The tension was unmistakable now. What began as lighthearted banter had turned into a quiet battle of pride. Jimmy tried to recover, flipping through his cards. "Let's go back, the first Rocky film. You wrote it in 3 days, right? Did you just run out of crayons?" The laughter this time was uneasy. Stallone paused, his expression unreadable. "I wrote it with everything I had," he said softly. "While sleeping in a bus terminal, trying to sell my dog to eat. So yeah, crayons weren't really the priority." The audience fell silent. Jimmy's smirk vanished. Stallone leaned forward slightly, his tone calm but cutting. "You know, Jimmy, sometimes you crack jokes," he said. "Sometimes you crack dignity. Be careful which one you're breaking tonight." The air grew heavy. The gloves were off, and everyone in the room could feel it. The war of words had only just begun. Everyone had tuned in expecting laughter, a few jokes, a bit of nostalgia, maybe a story or two from a Hollywood icon. What they didn't expect was a live battle for respect unfolding right before their eyes. With every exchange, Jimmy Kimmel's barbs grew sharper, but Sylvester Stallone's composure only made him stronger. Jimmy leaned back, smiling as though nothing was wrong. "You know, Sly, you should try stand-up." That comeback was almost intelligible. Stallone didn't blink. "And you should try sincerity sometime," he said coolly. "It might shock your audience." The crowd gasped audibly, the tension thickening like smoke. Jimmy, clearly amused by the reaction, pushed harder. "Let's be honest," he said. "You've made more sequels than Hollywood has original ideas. Ever think of just letting it go?" Stallone crossed his legs slowly, his tone steady. "I keep telling stories people want to hear," he replied. "Maybe that's what bothers you." Jimmy gave a mocking chuckle. "Or maybe it's that you keep playing the same guy, just with a new haircut." Stallone's eyes narrowed slightly. Better than being a new haircut with the same jokes. The audience erupted in laughter and applause. Jimmy forced a grin. "Okay, touché. But seriously, isn't there a part of you that worries people only see you as a punchline now?" Stallone leaned in, his voice low but firm. "Only when hosts like you try to write the jokes," he said. "Let me remind you, Rocky wasn't just a film. It was hope for people who had none." The shift in the room was immediate. The laughter turned to applause, loud, sincere, and long. Trying to regain control, Jimmy smirked. "But you're a millionaire now, right? Don't you think it's a little rich talking about struggle?" Stallone's voice deepened, carrying the weight of truth. Struggle doesn't expire with a paycheck, he said. It leaves scars. And it teaches you how to recognize when you're being used for someone else's punchline. Jimmy hesitated, his confidence faltering. You think I'm using you? He asked. Stallone didn't look away. You tell me. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time that night, Jimmy looked uneasy. Then, attempting to laugh it off, he said, Well, folks, I didn't realize we booked a philosophy major tonight. Stallone smiled. Funny, I thought we booked a host. The audience roared again, the energy shifting fully in Stallone's favor. Jimmy clenched his jaw, clearly struggling to recover. So, he said, searching for footing, how do you respond to critics who say your career is just nostalgia now? That without the past, you're not much in the present? Stallone's expression hardened. Critics talk, he said simply. Legends work, and I don't need to relive the past. I built it. The audience exploded into thunderous applause, no longer laughing but standing in genuine respect. Jimmy leaned forward one last time, almost pleading. Come on, Sly, can't you take a joke? Stallone's smile faded, his voice quiet but cutting. Can you take the truth? The silence that followed swallowed the room whole. Jimmy looked toward the camera, forcing a grin. We'll be right back after this short break. If Stallone doesn't punch me before then. The audience laughed nervously, but everyone watching knew this wasn't just a break. It was a truce line, and it was fragile, because when words start cutting deeper than expected, even the strongest can feel the heat. But Stallone? He didn't flinch. He'd spent a lifetime fighting to be heard, and tonight he wasn't backing down. The commercial break ended, and the lights snapped back on with a sharp brightness that made the tension from before feel almost tangible. Jimmy Kimmel straightened his jacket, pasted on his signature grin, and tried to reclaim control. We're back with the one and only Sylvester Stallone, he announced, his voice cheerfully strained. Voice therapy. The man, the myth, the what is it now? 80-something-year-old action figure? The audience laughed, but Stallone didn't. He simply smiled, unbothered. Better to be molded in stone than made of plastic, Jimmy, he replied. The crowd erupted louder this time. There was a shift in the room, subtle but unmistakable. For the first time, Jimmy wasn't the crowd's favorite. Trying to brush it off, Jimmy chuckled. Well, I've got to say your fans are loyal, almost aggressively so, like they still think you're that scrappy underdog from Philly. Stallone met his gaze evenly. I am, he said simply. I just wear better shoes now. The audience laughed warmly, but Jimmy's smirk faltered. Come on, Sly, he pressed. Haven't we moved past the whole underdog thing? Isn't it time to hang up the gloves literally and metaphorically? Stallone's eyes hardened. You ever tell a soldier to hang up his boots? He asked quietly. Just because the war makes you uncomfortable? The room fell still. Jimmy blinked, thrown. I don't think making Rocky IX qualifies as war, he tried to joke. Stallone didn't miss a beat. It does when you're fighting cynicism, apathy, and the belief that people like me can't still inspire. The applause that followed was explosive, genuine, and defiant. Stallone's calm, grounded voice carried through it all like a veteran who had nothing left to prove. Jimmy leaned forward again, feigning lightness. So what you're saying is it's not ego, it's a mission? No, Stallone replied. It's responsibility. To remind people you don't stop because the world tells you to. You stop when you decide you're done. The audience cheered once more, sensing they were witnessing something more than an interview. It was conviction versus cynicism, heart versus mockery. Powerful words, Jimmy nodded before quickly adding with a smirk, spoken like a man trying to sell box office tickets. Stallone's expression sharpened. You know, Jimmy, he said slowly. You keep trying to turn this into a punchline. Maybe because deep down you're afraid someone might actually take me seriously. The audience gasped, then roared with approval. Jimmy sat back, visibly rattled. You want to know what scares me, Sly? He said, forcing calm. It's that people think your on-screen persona is who you really are. That Rocky is real. Stallone leaned forward, his voice low but firm. Rocky is real. Not because I wrote him, but because millions of people saw themselves in him. He's a mirror, Jimmy. Something you clearly avoid looking into. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. The air buzzed with raw emotion, as if everyone knew something big was about to happen. There comes a point when even the most composed man decides enough is enough, and Stallone had reached it. As he straightened in his chair, the atmosphere shifted again. Jimmy tried one last jab, his tone brittle. So Sly, what's next? A line of anti-aging supplements? Maybe a reality show keeping up with the comebacks? The audience chuckled weakly, uncertain. The laughter no longer felt safe. They could all sense it now. The moment had changed. And it wasn't comedy anymore. It was confrontation. Stallone exhaled slowly, his calm presence cutting through the charged silence. You know, Jimmy, he began, his voice low but steady. It's funny. You sit in that chair and poke fun at people like it's armor. But at some point, the jokes stop being clever and start becoming noise. Jimmy shifted slightly, shrugging with forced nonchalance. It's just TV, man. You know that. Stallone's tone deepened, carrying a quiet weight that silenced the laughter. Maybe that's the problem, he said. You treat everything like a punchline, even the people who come here with a story worth telling. A hush fell over the room. Jimmy tried to lighten the moment, laughing awkwardly. Don't be so sensitive, Sly. You've taken real punches before. Surely you can take a few words. Stallone rose to his feet. The motion was slow, deliberate, commanding. The audience gasped. I've taken enough, he said. And I've given enough. To this industry, to this audience, to the spirit of what storytelling is supposed to mean. Jimmy stood too, trying to maintain control of the situation. Hey, where are you going? We're not done here. Stallone turned toward the crowd. But I am. The studio went silent for a heartbeat before erupting into applause, not out of shock but respect. Jimmy tried to laugh it off, hiding his unease behind sarcasm. Don't worry, folks, he said. Next week we'll have someone with a sense of humor. Stallone paused at the edge of the stage, then turned his head slightly. Next week, he said evenly, try having someone with a soul. The audience roared again, some rising to their feet. Stallone began to walk off, but before disappearing behind the curtain, he stopped and faced the crowd one last time. His eyes, filled with years of experience, resilience, and quiet dignity, swept across the room. You know, he said, voice steady, I've spent a lifetime building characters who fight for something. Maybe it's time late night did the same. The cameras tried to follow him, but the feed cut abruptly back to Jimmy, left blinking under the harsh studio lights, unsure how to recover. Backstage, Stallone strode past stunned crew members. Some clapped softly. Others nodded in silent approval. One young intern whispered, "Thank you." Within minutes, social media exploded. Hashtags like "Cogs Respect Stallone" and "Late Night Gone Wrong" trended worldwide. Memes flooded every platform. One showing Stallone standing tall captioned, "Strength isn't loud, it's dignified." News outlets replayed the clip on loop. Analysts debated it. Celebrities, actors, directors, athletes publicly praised his composure and courage. Stallone hadn't just walked out of a studio that night. He had walked into history. What began as an ordinary late-night interview had transformed into a raw confrontation that peeled back the layers of performance, exposing ego, integrity, and truth. He didn't storm off in anger. He left in dignity, and everyone watching in the studio and around the world knew they had just witnessed something real. Who was right? Who went too far? That debate would rage online for days. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just another talk show segment. It was a turning point. A reminder that sometimes the quietest exits leave the loudest echoes.